Alan Alda is one of the world's most recognisable and beloved actors. We fell in love with him as the wisecracking surgeon Hawkeye Pierce on the hit series MASH.
You probably watched MASH growing up and thought it was just a funny show about army doctors. Most of us did. But the stuff going on when they were not filming is honestly mind-blowing. Now that Alan Alda has reached 90 years of age, he is finally pulling back the curtain to reveal the raw truth. The behind-the-scenes story is packed with crazy drama that the network kept totally secret until this very moment. From battlefield realism to Hollywood success. Before MASH became a hit show on television, this famous story actually started as a book. Back in 1968, a real army doctor named H. Richard Hornberger decided to write down his memories from the Korean War. He used a fake name, Richard Hooker, and teamed up with another writer to put out a novel called MASH. The book was full of dark humor, but it also contained the scary reality of life in a field hospital near the front lines. The writer spent endless hours fixing up wounded soldiers, so he knew exactly how these doctors joked around just to keep themselves from going crazy. Hollywood executives saw the book and realized right away that the story had huge potential for the big screen. In 1970, a director named Robert Altman turned the book into a major movie. People absolutely loved it. The film made a ton of money at the box office and even won a huge award at the famous Cannes Film Festival in France. It was nominated for several Academy Awards, which was proof that regular folks really cared about these doctors. And it also helped that it wasn't just another cliché movie about soldiers shooting guns in a war zone. Because the movie did so well, executives at CBS decided they wanted to turn the story into a weekly television show. Well, as you can guess, that was a pretty risky move back then. Movie fans usually hated television spin-offs because the smaller budget made them look cheap. Plus, the real Vietnam War was happening at that exact time. So war was a very touchy subject for everyday families watching TV in their living rooms. Anyway, the studio hired a talented team to build the pilot episode. The creators made a promise that they would not just copy the movie word for word. They wanted the television show to have its own unique soul. They kept the Korean War setting, but they focused heavily on the human side of the characters. These doctors were not classic superhero figures without any flaws, but were just regular men who worked long hours under terrible pressure. The writers balanced funny jokes with the heavy reality of blood and lost lives, which was something television had never really tried before. The very first episode aired on September 17th, 1972, with Alan Alda playing the main role of Captain Hawkeye Pierce. The reviews were quite good, which made it all the more confusing when the viewer numbers were brought in, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of what everyone expected. The near cancellation and the turnaround. When those initial numbers came back, network leaders at CBS were completely panicking. The show was sitting at number 56 in the rankings, which meant nobody was really watching it. For a project based on an award-winning film, those numbers were flat-out embarrassing. The threat of getting canceled was hanging over everyone's heads every single week. The big problem was that the network wanted a standard comedy, but the writers were trying something brand new. They wanted to show the real pain of war alongside the funny jokes. You could see this change happening in episode 17 of that first season, titled "Sometimes You Hear the Bullet." In that episode, a young soldier who was a close friend of Hawkeye dies right on the operating table. It was the very first time a patient died on the show, and Hawkeye breaks down crying while still wearing his surgical scrubs. Network bosses were terrified that viewers would turn off their televisions because it was too sad, but that heavy scene proved the show had a real heart. Even with that powerful storytelling, the ratings stayed dangerously low all through the winter. Luckily for the cast, CBS decided against throwing the show in the trash just yet. Instead, they took a big chance and aired reruns all summer long in 1973. And that single move changed everything. Since there was nothing else new on television, millions of families tuned in and fell in love with the characters from the beginning. Then, to top it off, CBS decided to move the show to Saturday nights, placing it right after All in the Family, which was the #1 series in the entire country at the time. Millions of people who were already sitting on their couches just stayed tuned in to see what Hawkeye and his pals were up to. The ratings went through the roof almost overnight, jumping straight into the top 10 list. But just as the show became a giant success, a whole new battle was brewing behind the scenes between the show creators and the network suits. Battles with CBS. Now that millions of people were tuning in every week, you would think the network bosses would let the creators do their jobs in peace. But as the show grew bigger, the fights behind the scenes got way more intense. Producer Gene Reynolds and writer Larry Gelbart wanted to keep pushing the limits of what a TV show could do, while CBS executives just wanted a safe comedy that would not upset anyone. The main problem was that the network hated how heavy the stories were getting. Some episodes focused so much on pain and the mental weight of war that executives started calling the show a situation tragedy instead of a situation comedy. Network censors were constantly hovering over the scripts like hawks. They forced the crew to hide visible blood during surgery scenes, worried that families eating dinner would get grossed out. They also banned everyday words like virgin, forcing writers to scrub the dialogue clean before filming could ever start. The biggest showdown of all was over the canned laugh track. Back then, every sitcom used fake recorded laughter to tell the audience when to chuckle. But Gelbart and Reynolds fought like crazy against it. They argued that playing fake laughter while doctors were trying to save dying young men in an operating room was completely tasteless. CBS refused to get rid of the laugh track entirely, but after endless arguing, the creators won a huge victory. CBS agreed that no fake laughter would ever be played inside the operating room. That single change gave those medical scenes a chilly feeling that no other show on television had. Even with those small wins, the network still threw out several scripts completely because they thought the storylines were just too dark or controversial for prime time. But the writers never gave up their mission to show the true cost of war. Shocking cast departures and on-set tensions. Just when the show was hitting its stride in the ratings, the cast began to fall apart. The very first big blow happened when McLean Stevenson, who played the beloved Commander Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, decided he wanted out. He was tired of being part of an ensemble cast and wanted to be the main star of his own series. Instead of writing a happy ending where Henry went home to his family, the writers made a bold choice that shocked the nation. In the Season 3 finale, titled Abyssinia, Henry, his character, gets discharged and boards a plane to head back to America. But in the final minutes of the episode, Radar walks into the operating room and reads a telegram stating that Henry's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan, with no survivors. To get genuine reactions on camera, the producers kept the script secret from almost the entire cast until right before filming that final scene. The country was stunned, and thousands of angry fans flooded CBS with phone calls and letters. Not long after that heartbreaking exit, Wayne Rogers, who played Hawkeye's best buddy trapper John McIntyre, quit the show too. He felt his character was being sidelined while all the best storylines went to Alan Alda. Since Rogers had never signed his formal contract, he walked away before Season 4 started, leaving writers to explain his exit in a quick line of dialogue. These rapid departures led to endless rumors in Hollywood tabloids about nasty power struggles and heavy tension on set. People claimed that Alan Alda was taking over the show and pushing everyone else out of the spotlight. To fill the giant gaps, the show brought in Mike Farrell as B.J. Honeycutt and Harry Morgan as Colonel Potter. These new actors brought fresh life to the camp, but making everything look so believable required incredible effort, and the crew soon found themselves facing dangerous real-world threats, chasing authenticity and facing real disasters. You could really tell that the people making the show cared deeply about getting the little things right. Especially after losing major cast members, they did not just sit in an office in California, guessing what war felt like. Members of the team actually packed their bags and flew straight to South Korea to sit down with real doctors and nurses who survived those frontline hospitals. They listened to hours of real stories about late-night surgeries and military life, and then they wove those real experiences right into the scripts. To make the outdoor scenes look believable, the crew set up camp at Malibu Creek State Park. The rolling hills there looked surprisingly similar to the Korean landscape. But filming out there was no walk in the park. The actors had to stand around under the blazing hot California sun for hours while wearing thick military uniforms. They dealt with dust kicking up into their eyes, unpredictable weather, and dirty boots, all so the camp on your television screen looked like a real place where doctors were fighting to save lives. Then, right as they were getting ready to wrap up the entire series in 1982, real disaster hit them out of nowhere. A wild brush fire broke out nearby and quickly tore through the dry hills, heading straight for the filming location. The flames spread so fast that everyone on set had to run for their lives, abandoning equipment and memories. By the time firefighters managed to put the blaze out, the famous outdoor set was completely ruined, leaving behind only burnt ground and melted metal. Instead of throwing hands up in defeat or spending huge money rebuilding the set, the writers did something really clever. They took the destroyed set and made it part of the actual story. They wrote a script where the doctors had to pack up and leave because of a fire sweeping through the camp. When you watch those scenes and see thick smoke and burnt tents, you are looking at real damage from a real disaster that happened while the cameras were rolling. Goodbye, farewell, and amen. After sitting near the top of the ratings for over a decade, the show was still printing money for the network. Viewership was as strong as ever, and network executives at CBS were begging the creators to keep production going for as many years as possible. But Alan Alda and the rest of the team felt very differently about the future. They knew that if they stayed on the air for too long, the writing would start feeling lazy and repetitive. They wanted to walk away while the show was still at the absolute peak of its popularity, leaving behind a legacy of top-quality television rather than slowly fading out. Eventually, the network gave in and allowed them to end the show on their own terms with a movie-length finale. They called the episode Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, and CBS scheduled it to air on February 28, 1983. Alan took on an even bigger role for this final stretch, stepping up to direct the special episode himself. Having the main star guide the ship ensured that the ending stayed true to the characters everyone loved. To give the show the proper send-off it deserved, the final episode ran for nearly 2.5 hours instead of the usual 30 minutes. The hype leading up to that Monday night was unlike anything television had ever seen before. Whole towns across America practically shut down as families, friends, and neighbors gathered around their screens to see how Hawkeye and the gang would finally say goodbye to Korea. When the viewing numbers finally came in, they blew every expectation completely out of the water. Over 105 million people watched the broadcast live, and when you count everyone watching at crowded viewing parties or public bars, estimates shot up past 120 million viewers. The finale pulled in a 60.3 rating and a 77 share, meaning over 3/4 of all televisions turned on in the entire country were watching the exact same show. To this day, that single broadcast remains the most watched scripted episode in American television history. No modern show on cable or streaming has ever come close to matching that record-breaking crowd. Rather than relying on cheap stunts or forced drama, the finale delivered an emotional, realistic ending that honored the true weight of war and the deep bonds built between the doctors. A legacy that built modern television. Even after the final credits rolled and the camp set was packed away, the story of this landmark show was far from over. Instead of fading into television history, the series stepped right into a lucrative second life through continuous reruns. By the early 1990s, local television stations across the country were paying top dollar to broadcast old episodes every single day. The show generated over $400 million in syndication profits during those early years alone, turning it into a huge financial goldmine for the studio and keeping Hawkeye right in the living rooms of millions of Americans. That relentless rerun schedule made sure the series never truly left the public mind. Decade after decade, new generations of kids discovered the show on cable networks like MeTV, while older fans kept coming back to rewatch their favorite moments. Once digital platforms took over the entertainment world, all 251 episodes landed on streaming services like Hulu, giving people instant access to the entire 11-season journey whenever they wanted. Beyond the hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, the series completely changed the rules for how television writers created drama and comedy. Before this show came along, television executives believed that a series had to be either a pure comedy with silly laugh lines or a heavy drama with serious undertones. The show successfully created the blueprint for what we now call the modern dramedy, by proving that a single half-hour episode could jump smoothly from gut-busting belly laughs to heartbreaking emotional tragedy. Hit programs that came out years later, like ER and Scrubs, directly owe their entire style to the foundation built by Hawkeye and his team. As time went on, public interest moved toward the aging cast members who made the show so special. In May of 2025, fans around the world mourned the loss of Loretta Swit, who brilliantly played Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan. She was one of the very few actors who appeared in both the pilot episode and the finale. Her passing marked the painful end of an era, leaving only 4 surviving core members from the original cast. Alan Alda, at 90. Today, Alan stands as one of the last living links to a golden age of television history. As he reaches 90 years old, the enduring legacy of the show continues to follow him wherever he goes. Along with Mike Farrell, Jamie Farr, and Gary Berghoff, he is one of only 4 primary cast members left from the original ensemble. Though decades have passed since they took off their army fatigues for the last time, the bond shared among the surviving actors remains as strong as ever, kept alive through shared memories and public appearances, honoring the show that changed their lives. Out of everyone in that talented group, Alan remains the central face most deeply connected to Hawkeye Pierce. Over the years, countless journalists have interviewed him about his legendary career, but the conversation always circles back to those 11 years spent in the Korean War medical camp. Yet for Alan, the true value of the series has very little to do with broken viewership records or syndication millions. Instead, it comes down to the personal stories people share with him when they bump into him on the street. Alda frequently shares that even now, complete strangers walk up to him to reveal a life-changing secret. They tell him that watching Hawkeye Pierce fight through exhaustion to save lives in that operating room inspired them to go to medical school and become real-life doctors. Hearing that a fictional character created to entertain people on Monday nights actually motivated real men and women to dedicate their lives to healing others is something Alan considers the ultimate victory of his entire career. It proves that the series went far beyond standard Hollywood entertainment. It captured the messy truth of human nature under extreme stress, showing that humor and laughter are not just ways to pass the time, but essential tools for surviving life's darkest moments. More than 40 years after the final episode aired, the story of the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital still resonates deeply with audiences across generations. Alan Alda gave everything to make Hawkeye Pierce feel real, and the world never forgot it. Did Alan Alda's portrayal of Hawkeye Pierce secretly change television history forever? What is your all-time favorite Hawkeye moment from the entire series? Leave your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.